Hey, everybody. Quick editorial note on this week's podcast. You may or may not have noticed, I am really late this week in getting this to you all. I apologize for that. I had significant tech issues getting this thing recorded, but I hope it was worth the wait. Enjoy this week's episode. You're not stuck with the normal that your family has right now. If a loop can be learned, it can be unlearned, and a new normal can be installed. Hi, I'm Dan Hayden, and this is the Positive Legacy Podcast for Christian fathers. This week, we're wrapping up a 4-part series on patterns at home. A few weeks ago in episode 29, we named the pattern underneath a lot of your bad days. Something sets you off, you react, there's fallout, everybody pulls back, life resets with really no one talking about it, and then the whole thing quietly repeats itself. In episode 30, titled When You're One Word Away from Making It Worse, we zoomed into the few seconds between trigger and reaction, and I gave you an exercise called Name, Breathe, Delay. And last week, we dropped repair into that loop. We said, even when you miss that pause and blow it, you can still weaken that pattern by inserting a clean repair before you move on. Today, I want to pull all of that together and talk about a pattern shift, how you actually become a different normal in your home over time. Because insight is good. Awareness is good. But the truth is, your wife and kids experience you in behaviors, not in concepts. They don't feel your understanding of triggers. They feel how you walk into Sunday mornings. They feel what happens on a random Tuesday night when everybody is exhausted. And they certainly feel your tone when you're running late. So this episode is about moving from, I get this in my head, and moving toward, my family can tell that something's different in me. And it's consistent. Let's start with redrawing the loop with everything you've been working on. Again, the old loop that we named in episode 29 looked like this: trigger, reaction, fallout, distance, reset, and a repeat. No interruption, no repair. And that reset was just time and distraction. Now, with what you've been practicing, hopefully it sounds something like this: trigger, something happens. And sometimes you've been able to manage to interrupt that with the name, breathe, delay. And if you haven't, that's okay. A reaction still happens, and sometimes there's still fallout. There's still a bit of emotional distance. But now, before you reset, you insert repair. You name what happened, you own your part, you reconnect and recommit. Then life resets. And over time, as you keep doing that, the loop doesn't hit as hard. It starts to weaken. So the updated loop is trigger, interruption sometimes, reaction, fallout, distance, repair, reset, repeat, but a little weaker each time. What I want to add is one more layer. Over time, that weaker eventually becomes a new default. The way your kids would describe, this is just how dad is on Sunday mornings, actually starts to change. To do that, we need to talk about something I call your entry point. Up until now, a lot of our work together has been inner world work. Triggers at home, triggers in marriage, emotional availability, spiritual autopilots, spiritual micro practices. Those episodes helped you change the story in your head and the climate in your heart. That's essential work. And without that, the work this week either turns into white knuckled behavior or fades out in a week. But if we stop there, your patterns don't actually shift. You just feel more aware of them. An entry point is a single, predictable place inside one loop where you decide, this is where I'm going to show up 10% differently every time for the next 30 days. It's not a total personality overhaul. It's not perfection. Just one consistent behavior at one consistent spot in the loop. Let me make this concrete with a few real examples that came up with the men in our community. Take one client's Tuesday night, Wednesday morning handoff with his wife. His wife works a set stretch of days. The night before that starts, usually on a Tuesday, the house is sort of buzzing. Bags needing packed, kid needs wrangling. Minds are already working toward that shift. The old loop looked like this for them. Tuesday night comes, time pressure is in the air, unspoken expectations are floating around. And by the time they hit 9 or 10 p.m., there's irritation. The trigger is that feeling of, we're not ready, this is on me. The reaction is snappiness, maybe a sarcastic tone, short comments, a vibe of, you're late, or why didn't you think of this? Fallout is both of them feeling alone and undersupported. Distance creeps in, they fall into bed tired and just disconnected. Then Wednesday morning comes and they both just sort of power through. No repair, no change. Next week, same thing. When we looked at that loop together, we didn't just go, all right, well, next time just be more patient. That's not a plan. We asked, where is the concrete entry point here? For him, the entry point became very specific. Tuesday at 7 p.m. He decided my 10% shift is this. Every Tuesday at 7, I will proactively join the handoff instead of waiting until everything's chaotic and then critiquing. I'm going to help pack. I will ask what would be most helpful, and I will pay more attention next time. Same schedule, same work stretch, but he picked one behavior. I get off my phone, I get off the couch, and I step into the handoff routine. And he committed to doing that for 30 days. Let's look at my own house with weekly meal planning, which is the bane of my wife's existence every Saturday night or Sunday morning. You heard the story back when we talked about triggers around mental workload. My wife and I would sit down with a calendar, sports, youth group, work commitments, and she'd say, okay, we got to figure out dinners for this week. My avoider saboteur loved to slip out the side door of that conversation. My old loop was she sighs and pulls out the calendar. I feel the stress of logistics and the weight of decision fatigue. And my avoider whispers, this is stressful. You don't want to deal with this right now. And then I would just check out. My wife ends up carrying all of it. Resentment quietly builds, and I feel guilty, and then I avoid more. She feels alone. We never really talk about it. Reset. Next Sunday, same thing. We could have tried to attack that at the level of, I should care more about meal planning. But we decided on a simple entry point, the first 3 minutes that she sits down with that calendar. And look, I'm not always there when she does this, but my 10% shift became whenever she pulls out the calendar and says, okay, we've got to figure out meals, I will offer exactly two things, one idea for a dinner and one meal that I'm going to cook. Not, I'm going to become the full meal planning hero overnight. Just, I will sit there in silence. I will offer one dinner idea in one night that I can cook dinner. It sounds small, but small and consistent is how nervous systems start to learn the loop is changing. Another one you heard is at one of my other clients' Sunday church launch. The old loop in his house looks pretty familiar to a lot of us. Sunday morning hits, kids are slow, somebody can't find their shoes, someone else is melting down, and the clock is relentless. The trigger is the feeling that, hey, we're going to be late again. The reaction is volume. Hey, let's go. We're already late. We got to get loaded up in the car. And the fallout is tense car rides and shame. The distance is a kind of quiet resentment, an internal vow, next week will be different, with no real plan. Reset is on the drive home. The football game, the nap, the no repair, next Sunday, repeat. Different details, same script. We found an entry point there too. The way he physically and mentally walked to the car. He didn't change the time they left for church. He didn't suddenly make everybody in his house a morning person. His 10% shift was, I will start the car at the same time, but I will change my tone and my self-talk. As I walk to the car, I will take one slow breath. I'll put my hand on the door, and then I'll quietly pray, God, help me bring quiet and patience into this van, not more pressure. It's still Sunday. It's still time to go to church. They're still sometimes running behind, but he changed his entry point into that loop. Are you starting to see a pattern here? We're not creating an entirely different life. We're choosing one pressure point in a loop you already mapped and shifting your behavior there by about 10% on purpose and for 30 days. So let me turn this toward you. Think back to episode 29. You mapped one loop in your head. Maybe it was Sunday mornings. Maybe it was bedtime. Maybe it was the first 10 minutes you walk in the door back from work. Picture that loop right now. See the whole thing play out like a short movie. What tends to trigger it? What do you usually want to do next? What happens in the room? And how do you, quote unquote, just move on without really dealing with it? Now ask yourself, where inside that sequence is one clear entry point? Because the answer is not, I just won't get triggered anymore. That's not realistic. The answer also is not, I'll never raise my voice again. That's your judge setting you up to quit, because you know as well as I do, that is also very unlikely to happen. We're looking for something more like this. Every Tuesday at 7, I will step into the handoff with my wife instead of leaving her alone to it. Every Sunday morning, when I put my hand on the front door, I will pause, breathe, and choose a gentler tone. It looks like every time I step in from work, I put my hand on the door, I will pause for 5 seconds and ask myself, what does my family need of me right now for the next 5 minutes? That's your entry point. Once you named it, here's how you turn it into an actual pattern shift and not just a good idea. First, frame it as a 10% pattern shift for the next 30 days, not a new personality you have to suddenly become. Your saboteurs love the all or nothing thinking. They say stuff like, if you were a really calm spiritual leader, you'd have this whole house running like clockwork in no time. Then you miss a day and the judge says, see, I knew you couldn't do it. You're the same guy. Why are you even trying? Your sage thinks more like this. If I can make a small, consistent shift at this point in the loop for 30 days, my family will feel the difference. They might not even be able to really name it at first, but the climate is going to change. So instead of, I'm going to become a completely different man on Sunday mornings, you say, for the next 30 days, I will not raise my voice on Sunday mornings. I will state expectation once, follow through calmly, and if I miss it, I will repair before the day is done. Instead of, I'm going to handle all the meal planning now, you say, for the next 30 days, every Sunday night, I will offer one dinner idea and one night to cook. Okay, second, understand that this is where all your earlier inner work plugs in. Changing a behavior at a predictable point in the loop will poke at your saboteurs. They are going to fight back. You will be tempted to revert, to come in hot, to just check out, to postpone the conversations. When that happens, this is where you use everything we've been practicing. You notice the surge. You name which saboteur is talking. You do a quick PQ rep. Maybe it's one slow breath. Maybe you feel your feet on the floor. Maybe it's a breath prayer. Or maybe you do a super short sage check-in. That sounds like something like, what am I afraid this means right now? What might they be afraid this means? What story do I want us to tell about this season later? And then from that grounded place, you do your 10% behavior. You walk to the car differently. You sit down with the calendar differently. You step into the handoff differently. Third, give yourself a simple way to track this over 30 days so you can actually see the pattern shifting. You don't need a fancy app. A sticky note on the fridge is more than doable. Maybe it's a tiny note in your phone. And every day that loop comes up, you simply ask yourself, did I show up 10% differently at my entry point today? Yes or no? That's all we're looking for. If the answer is yes, even if the whole day feels messy, it still counts. Good work. If the answer is no, don't bury it. Practice what we talked about in the repair episode. Name what happened, own your part, reconnect with whoever was affected, reconnect and recommit. I missed it today. I'm still working on this. I will try again tomorrow. That's not failure. That's work. Finally, I want you to imagine something with me. Fast forward 30 days and you've been doing this with one loop for one entry point. It has not been perfect and you've missed days. You've repaired and you've shown up differently more often than you used to. If I set your kid down now and said, hey, what's it like on Sunday mornings now? Or what's it like on Tuesday nights before mom's shift? Or what's it like when dad comes home from work lately? What do you think they'll say? What do you want them to say? Hey, you're not aiming for he's never stressed. He's always calm. You're aiming for something like he just doesn't yell like he used to, or it feels less tight around here. That is pattern shift. That is becoming a different normal in your home. If you want more on emotional availability, consistent character, spiritual leadership, I've got whole episodes on those topics. Go back and listen. Those are the values, the inner muscles. What we're doing here with entry point and loops is how you actually install that work into your daily cycles so that your family can see it and they can feel it. So here's your concrete challenge for this week, really for the next month. Pick one loop, not three, just one. Write it down in one sentence. Sounds something like, for the next 30 days on Sunday mornings, I will. Or, for the next 30 days, every time I walk through the door after work, I will. And then for the next 30 days, just pay attention. Journal a few lines every couple of days. What are you noticing in yourself? How is the room reacting? How is the next cycle of that loop feeling even just a little differently? Look, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're quietly trying to change the climate of your home, one entry point at a time. If you want to do this work with other Christian dads who are choosing specific loops and tracking real changes in their lives around sports schedules or tight budgets, that's exactly what we do in my Positive Legacy Academy. We don't stay in theory. We walk the walk. We walk through these loops together in real time. If that sounds like the kind of support that you want, you can check the link in the show notes or grab a free coaching call with me anytime. Until next time, stay rooted in grace, stay steady in mind and spirit, and keep building those positive legacies one intentional moment at a time. And as you look at your own home right now, what's the one loop that you're willing to commit to for the next 30 days? And what's the specific 10% shift you're ready to make at that entry point? Talk to you again next week.